And hello, movie lovers, and welcome to the show. With me tonight, I have Brent Scarpo, who is actually the former casting director and associate for Shawshank Redemption. Say hello to everyone, Brent.
Hello.
And I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. This means so much to me and my channel and all my other followers. I've been looking for this all week. And in case anybody's wondering why my voice is going out, it's because of the fact I'm also excited because Brent's here, but it's also because of the fact that I had a little bit of an issue with laryngitis. So if you notice that I'm hoarse a little bit, please forgive me on that. But welcome to the show, Brent. I do appreciate this. Like I said
Oh, my
before,
pleasure. I'll talk for you. I don't lack that ability. So
awesome.
no, I've been very excited about this, and you and I've been planning it, and it's my pleasure. It's my joy. There's nothing I love more than movies, and I love being able to talk about them and learn from them.
Same here as well. And speaking of movies, I know that you were part of Shawshank Redemption. You were also the casting associate for Shawshank Redemption. We teased that a
Mhm.
little bit as well. But how many years did you start doing movies and stuff like that? What got you into the movie business and stuff like that? What
Yeah,
made
it's
you
a
say,
great. It's like
right,
yeah, like how do you find your passion, right?
right.
I So it's a pleasure. So to all your listeners, what a joy, what a pleasure. I'm originally from Warren, Pennsylvania, though I was born in California, but fortunately my parents were divorced, so we went to this small little town, probably no different than the one you're in Mississippi. And I just, since I was 7, I've had a passion for the industry. I mean, I was a TV-aholic. I loved movies. In my hometown, how funny, I didn't think we were going to talk about this. So in my hometown, we have this old theater that was built in the late 1800s. It's the Warren Library Theater. And you may or may not know this, but a lot of the theaters on the East Coast, when they were built, and this is the same with our theater, and it's this grand, beautiful, majestic theater, right? And so that's where we used to have our movies. I mean, it was like, I'm dating myself, but it was 50 cents to go. When you behind the movie, or behind the theater, was a railroad track. So in the late 1800s, all the major theaters in the country were built right in front of a railroad track, because what happened is vaudeville would take the train, and they would back up behind the theater in that town. They would open up the cart, all the props and the actors and the costumes. They would do their show and do their run, put it back in the train, and the train would go off again. So that was our theater. So I loved it. And then I've always wanted to be an actor. I studied at Mercyhurst University and got a degree in English Literature Communications. And then my passion was to move to California, which I did in the 80s, and studied at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. Had some success. I was about 10 years, I was doing the movies and the extras and the commercials and the cruise ships and all that stuff. And then, you got to make a living. And a good friend of mine was a casting director. She did a lot of background and under 5 casting, and she would put me into different bits and parts and auditions. And finally, she got this was in probably 93, if memory serves me correctly, and she called me saying that she had gotten a movie, but the studios wouldn't let her sign a contract unless she had an assistant, and her assistant quit. And so 3 times she asked me, and 3 times I said no, or twice I said no. And the 3rd time I was like, what are these movies? And she said, well, one's called Ed Wood with Johnny Depp. And I was a big fan of Johnny Depp
Ooh,
at the
I
time.
love that film.
Yes, great film. Great film. If you haven't seen a movie, lovers unite, go see it. And the other one's called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. And I said, that's the stupidest title I've ever heard in my entire life. What's that about? And she told me it was based on a Stephen King novella. That Stand By Me had already been done as one of the 4 seasons. And I said, well, what are you thinking of doing? She said, well, I'd like to do this Shawshank, because it's going to be in Mansfield, Ohio. And you get paid more, when you go out as a state. Whereas they were shooting Johnny Depp's film, Ed Wood, in California. And then, she and I had many conversations. And I said, well, how much would I get paid for this, right? She tells me. I was like, you should have started the conversation with that. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? I was like, how much am I getting paid? And So I ended up being her associate. We moved to Mansfield, Ohio. And, as we talked earlier, I'm a life coach now, and I marry my two passions together, which is education and life coaching with movies or the entertainment industry. But that was full on. It was the first time I'd really been behind the camera. And so Deborah Aquila was the main casting director. She had, cast the main leads. And then my friend and I, we did all the under five because we didn't, Frank Darabont was the director, and he didn't really get that much money. And as I shared with you in our pre-call, he never directed a film before. And the rumor has it that he had 3 separate meetings where they offered him an insane amount of money not to direct because he wrote it. Wow. So he said no, which is just chutzpah on his highest level, because you usually don't say those kinds of things, but he stood by his ground, bless him. And they finally called and said, okay, damn it, you can direct, but you're only getting $25 million, and you have to get an A-list star to play the part of Andy Dufresne.
Ooh, and I know that there was I hear a little bit of an echo. Hold on. I can still hear the echo for a minute. Try lowering your volume just a tiny bit. Let's see.
Okay. I don't hear it, but
I think it might be on my end. Let me take a look. Hello? Yeah, it's perfect. Sorry about that. But I know that there was some issues with that, not with the character, but with the actor that you guys signed on.
Issues. Is that how you call it? We called it more than that back then.
Well,
we called it, yeah. So the way this works typically is, for those of you who go to movies, there's so much behind the scenes. It's insane, right? And so, it's the movie business, right? Lest we forget, it's a business. So you have what is the creative people, and they're the ones that are the actors and actresses and so on and so forth. And then there's the business part of it, and those are the money people. We typically call them the suits, right? And they're not that creative, most of them, but some are. And then the creative people maybe don't understand budgets and money. That's why when you hear films going over budget by $50 million, well, that's because the director's not a producer. When you get those directors like Ron Shelton, who I worked with, he's producer, writer, and director, and he gets it. So they said, here's $25 million, and you're not getting it unless you get an A-list star for the part of Andy Dufresne. So, in the world of casting, you've got your A, B, C, and, down, and A is obviously your top person. So we get it. Deborah Aquila, cast it. I believe Morgan Freeman was cast first, but he's, I'm not saying that he wasn't the star, but the Andy Dufresne is the main character, obviously, right? So we get our main guy, we get our $25 million, woo-hoo! And about 6 weeks before principal photography, around the time I had flown to Mansfield, Ohio, to begin that whole casting process of the guards and the prisoners and the people that had 3, 4, 5, 6 lines, our guy quit. And this particular actor who initially got the part of Andy Dufresne, in his contract, it basically says he can change any scene or any line he wants without permission. And so when he was going over the script, he said to Frank, I'd like to have these scenes cut out. And the scenes that he wanted cut out were all the rape scenes that happened in prison. And there was a lot of discussion, and Frank said no. And this actor said, well, okay, I'm going to go now. And so the question for your audience is, who was supposed to play the part of Andy Dufresne and quit 6 weeks before we were supposed to start principal photography?
Who was it? I'm really interested.
Right? So A-list actors, we're talking 1993 or so. It was Tom Cruise, and as shocked as people are right now listening to this, whether it's live or whether it's in the recorded version, yeah, Tom Cruise was supposed to be in that, and it just kind of shows you the creative process and how fabulous it is. Because in my personal opinion, you and I wouldn't be talking. We would not be talking if he kept that role. I don't think we would have been nominated for Oscars. No. Nothing against Tom Cruise per se, but it just, I don't think that was a good fit. And that was money talking and not acting, in my personal opinion. So,
right.
We go back to
because
the
at the
drawing board, and the next person that was available was Tim Robbins, who
right,
is perfect. He's every guy.
I definitely agree with you on that. Also, too, here's the thing. Back in the 90s, we had hit movie stars and stuff like that. The big name celebrities and everything. I'm not saying that celebrities don't sell tickets anymore or anything like that, but actors are we don't have those go-to actors like we did back in the 90s, so to speak. So, you see a big name like Tom Cruise on the billboard, of course people are going to go ahead and check him out because it's in the 90s.
Right.
And, I think that having Tim Robbins as Andy is perfect, and plus cutting out those rape scenes wouldn't have gave those layers to Andy, to be honest with you. To
Yeah, I agree. It's I'm forgetting his name for some reason because we hung out. The gentleman that played the main character in that, he's a great actor. Look, it's part of prison life. This is a period piece from the 1940s to the 1970s. I've actually worked in a real prison. I've done life coaching in a real prison. So I've taken literally my entertainment life and my educational life and mushed them together. And I agree with you. I think it's, he was said, he was told that it was going to be done respectfully, but that's not Tom Cruise. He doesn't do those kinds of scenes. It just doesn't happen. He's a box office draw, and that's what you're referring to the 90s. Like,
right,
well, who's the box office draw? Right now, it's so freaky because there's so many different venues that, I mean, it's weird. I'll go on IMDb and I'll look at an actor's credits. I don't even know half the stuff they were in. I'll look at it like, how did I
right.
miss? Where was this? But it's changed. I mean, between when you have Netflix winning Oscars, and Emmys and things like that the world has changed since
Definitely, especially in the
yeah,
world of the streaming services and stuff like that.
right,
And now the
totally,
rules have changed for Oscars now. In order for Netflix to get nominated, it has to be played in a theater for so many days. Then it can
right.
get nominated.
That's
So
exactly
there's
right.
that little back door for
Yeah,
smaller indie
well,
filmmakers.
I shared with you earlier that I had a documentary, and we had submitted it for the Oscars, and we got really close to being nominated. But yeah, I had to find a theater that'd be willing to show it for X amount of days in order for them to consider it.
Right. And Crichton Films has a question.
Okay.
He goes, I would like to know, what was your first reaction seeing Shawshank Redemption on VHS at Blockbuster?
Oh, how funny! It's so funny. I don't know if I ever. So Crichton, we may know what your age is because you said the word blockbuster. So it's like you're probably around. It's funny. I actually applied for a job in my early 20s when I moved to California for Blockbuster. I think this was 93, and so I got to go. I didn't go to I wasn't able to go to the Oscars or anything like that, but there was a bunch of us in the crew that we rented out this restaurant and had the most amazing time when the Oscars got on there. But, we're sent all these copies of all these different films and such, so I didn't have to go there. But what's really interesting is where, to answer your question is, I would go into, like recently, like I'll go into a Walmart or I'll go somewhere where I'll see it, because I mean, right now everything's streamed, and I'll see copies of it, and it's kind of like, oh, and I'll pick it up, or I'll see the Spanish version, and that's really weird. But it's, I think the moment for me was, my mom's no longer with us, unfortunately, but I remember when it came out, and I'd never been in front of the in back of the camera before, and we had on Hollywood Boulevard. There is this amazing theater. It's been there since God knows, but it's in the round. It's like a dome. I think they call it the Dome. I think it's called the Citron or something like that. And so it was showing there. So we went, and it's almost kind of like the IMAX theaters now. And I remember my mom and my sister, my brother and I, we went, and it was phenomenal. And I just remember like watching it. And even though I'd been there, like I had been on the set for almost every scene, when I got done watching it, and this is the process of editing, I was like, I don't remember the film. I was like, and my mother she had tears in her eyes, and she leaned over in her seat and she looked at me and she was like, you worked on this? I was like, I did. And then my credit came up, and it's just like, I said, but I don't remember. Like that's what they call the magic of Hollywood.
Yeah, that is definitely the magic of Hollywood and stuff like that. And I bet it's one of those things of the tantalization of the fact, hey, I'm doing this. I'm creating film.
Yeah.
I'm doing something that I never knew that I could do before or possibly do.
Well,
And
and I
here
think
I am.
also too, when you're behind the camera, whether it's electrician, grip, construction, whatever, you're there from the beginning to the very end. Whereas an actor might have, a few days or the whole run or a week, and then they're gone. They don't see that entire process.
Exactly. And also, too, Beth from Made for TV podcast has a question, too.
Oh, okay.
And she goes, hey, John and Brett, it's Beth. Brent, did you know you had an Oscar winner on your hands? And how early did you know that you had that feeling?
That's a good. That is such a great question. I can't even begin to applaud how great that question is. To be honest with you, we didn't know what we had. We really like. I've listened to, gosh, interviews with Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman, Frank Darabont. I mean, various people. I'm still friends with a lot of the crew, and I can tell you this: I remember getting there, and a vast majority of us, it was kind of like our first time. Like there were some first time electricians and first time construction, first time, makeup person or whatever. I mean, there were some old hats, obviously, but we were just doing a job, and you read the script and it's like, okay, yeah, this is a really good script. And, it was a, based on a book. And even, I think even through that process, and I think the other part of that too is that you're so busy. Like the part that blew my mind from being an actor to doing this, we work 6-day work weeks, Monday through Saturday. Our minimum day was 12 hours. My maximum day was 21 hours. And then you go to bed and you get 3-4 hours sleep, and then you have a call time and you start all over again. We only had Sundays off. That's it. And we partied hard. I mean, there were, you get together, and we were in Mansfield, so you would either go to Cleveland or Columbus because you didn't want to stay in Mansfield because you were working there the whole time. But it was one of the most exhausting, most overwhelming, and cathartic and joyful experiences of my life. I would say to you, if there was a moment where I kind of went, I would say, I'm going through this now in my brain. I think it was the roof scene, because I went to that and that was just so amazing, and we were on top of the roof of the old, reformatory, and with the real tar. And I remember it was hot as caboot and we were sweating, and, I wanted to watch these actors act because I wasn't doing it. So there's a bit of a jealousy there as well. But I think that was a moment where I went, this is, but Oscar, not even close. Not even close.
And I wanted to say this, I still feel like Forrest Gump is overrated as a movie.
I'm glad you said it,
And
not me.
and here's the thing, I love Forrest Gump, and even one of my friends asked me this the other night. Whenever she watched Shawshank Redemption for the first time the other night, and she was like, "What do you like? Do you like Forrest Gump or do you like Shawshank Redemption?" I said, "I like Forrest Gump. It's a great film for its time, but Forrest Gump is overrated as a film, and I'm not afraid to admit that." And here's the thing, I feel like Shawshank Redemption should have won that year over Forrest Gump. And it's also an underrated film during that time and only got popular because of the cult following afterwards.
Right.
Everybody's like, oh, what's this Shawshank Redemption that we heard about that got Oscar nominations? I want to check that out. And I'm like,
Yeah.
where were you guys before the fact of this, especially as Stephen
Yeah,
King property?
it's Morgan tells this story all the time. He said the worst part of the Shawshank Redemption experience was the name, right? Like, no, like that, like, I mean, it's a Stephen King novella. It's called Rita Hayworth and the Shaw. That was the original title, Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. So then they're like, I know PR got together and like, yeah, we can't call it that. No one will see this film. And so it got down to Shawshank Redemption. But what is that? Now Forrest Gump, that's the person's name. Now I saw Forrest Gump. I've worked with Tom Hanks on a movie called That Thing You Do. Here's what I know why Shawshank works, right? And I think because of the cult following, because it got nominated for Oscars, and most people were like, wow, how did this thing called Shawshank Redemption get nominated for an Oscar and I didn't see it? So there was this natural curiosity to go see something that like got 7 nominations, right? It's like, what, how did I miss that? So then they saw it, and that's when that's when it spread like wildfire. So there's a great quote. I use it in my life coaching. It's phenomenal. So on the 10-year anniversary, Frank sent posters to everybody. And I have the old poster, and then there's this new poster, and I had it side by side. So I looked at the old poster. Even though I've had this thing up for years, I never really read the caption, right? And so I'm looking, Shawshank Redemption, he's coming out, like the thing that you had at the very beginning. And I look at this caption and I'm like, oh my God, that's why this film is so popular, right? So the caption of Shawshank Redemption on the poster is this: fear will keep you prisoner. Hope will set you free. And if you look at the last 15 to 20 years, and especially in the last 8, our world is in the midst of a lot of fear. And I say to you, the reason why it's more popular and has sustained itself longer than, say, Forrest Gump is because Tim Robbins represents every human being on the planet that has been victimized, that has been hurt, that has been stomped on, that has not been heard. That's why the Tom Cruise casting would not have worked. You would have walked out of that film going, oh my God, Tom Cruise made such a great, he did such a great job. Whereas when I walked out of the film, I think a lot of us, you didn't say, oh, some of you said, well, who's that actor that played Andy Dufresne? Oh, that's Tim Robbins, right? But no, you were talking about Andy Dufresne and what happened to him. And all of us, right, as far as that character concerned, I think had more of a connection in terms of life experience than the part of Forrest Gump.
Well, the thing I like about Andy Dufresne and also Tim Robbins, he brought a level of innocence about him. You can see the
Right.
level of innocence on his face when he gets into the prison, even in the courtroom. But Tom Cruise, it'd have been like too cool for school kind of vibe. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't have that. He can't play that innocent vibe of anything. Even whenever he played the douchebag brother, and where the brother had autism and stuff like that, he could not. To me, he played the caring brother like towards the end, but seeing that played out in Tim Robinson's character with Andy Dufresne, he just doesn't have that uniqueness about him where he can play off something innocent and stuff like that. In my
Yeah,
opinion,
Tom, he cannot play every man, right? We
no,
can't identify with that. Whereas, Tim Robbins, you could,
right,
he was that, he was that, he was a banker, for God's sakes. He didn't even have a celebrity look per se, whereas Tom Cruise has a very celebrity
right,
look and following. So the creative process, it always works well.
definitely. And I like how you use the quote of the fact that either you get busy dying or you can get busy living. I
Right.
liked how you use that for your life coaching and stuff like that. We're going to get into that in a minute. But
Sure.
I know that we teased another thing, though, where you had a lot of freaky stuff happening on the set as well, where paranormal stuff was happening on the
Well,
set.
the whole experience, it's funny because I think, well, not because of this, but just this whole, I think it was 2 years ago, they celebrated the 25th anniversary, and everyone gathered together in Mansfield yet again. And it's the whole experience was just so unique. It's like one of my top 10 life experiences. So, the shooting was in Mansfield. That reformatory has been there since the 1800s. Every scene was shot at the reformatory except for the interior shots of the prison. We actually built a prison in a parking lot 4 stories high, with prison cells and so on and so forth. But all those other shots were all part of the part of Ohio and the reformatory. So, but the interior, that was all we made that. So yeah, I mean, I remember when I went to the old reformatory, and I mean, there's, I'm actually writing a book about my experience with this, just because it just seems to be the right thing to do right now. And so I'm compiling the life coaching part, but also some of these great stories. So yeah, the assistant to Frank Darabont, we used to get, get a little drunk and go to the set at 3 a.m. Why? Because we were going to be there in 3 hours. And sometimes we literally we would wrap at 1 and then we had to be there at 6. And it was like, why am I leaving? Like, I'll just lay here on the floor. You got a deal. But yeah, Frank's assistant, he loved photography. And so we used to hang out together, and we go on to this crazy, reformatory. And they've torn a lot of it down now. They've got the main house, which is still there, but it was acres and it was phenomenal. And so he loved to take pictures, and there was this sort of grassy area near this walk, and so he took a bunch of pictures, and then he developed them over the next week. And then he called me. He's like, "Oh my God, you got to come into my office." I'm like, "What's going on?" Those pictures we took. And so we took the pictures, and there was me just doing my thing, and then there's these what do I want to say, ghosts next to me. So there was 2 distinct people to my left and 1 person to my right. Like, you could make out faces, and the stories are just incredible. I mean, prison life is not easy by any stretch of the imagination. I've worked in a prison. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. I remember I was on my Sundays, I usually got a massage really early in the morning. There's a woman that lived down the street, and she was phenomenal. I never got massages before, and that was the first thing I did. 8 o'clock, I said, just book me every Sunday until I'm done here after 4 months. So we talked about it. I remember halfway through my massages, she said, I don't know if I ever told you this, but my father was a guard at the old reformatory. I was like, oh, really? She's like, yeah. And I said, wow. And she's like, he never ever talked about work ever. This is probably for father, probably like the 1930s, 1940s or something like that. She said, I just remember one time as a little girl, he came home from work and he sat down at the table and he was really upset. And remember the scene where it's in the cafeteria and they talk about Andy being put in the hole and how long that took. And I think there was, we did a bunch of them there. But it was just some really great, James Whitmore, that was it. He was talking about that. Well, that's the real cafeteria. And they have these huge ceilings, like 25 feet tall. So this woman said her dad was really upset and, he talked about work. So apparently he was in charge of getting people to paint the ceiling of that cafeteria, that luncheon area. And so that was his order. He was given a crew, right? They put all the scaffolding up and they're on the top of this, deal. And halfway through, I think right when they started to paint, all the scaffolding fell. And most of those that were on the scaffolding had died. So, they deal with it. A couple of days later, they redo the scaffolding, right? He gets a new crew.
Wow.
They paint the ceiling. Now, the difference between the first crew and the second crew is the first crew were all black guys and the second crew was all white.
That is nuts, though, because of all those spirits that's inside that place.
It's
right.
It's so, we talk about a lot of racism, a lot of issues, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Well, remember the scene? I was here for this. Remember the scene where they're trying to find some soapstone so that they can carve out the chess pieces. So I was there, and we had a liaison from the new prison. The new prison was amazing. College, high school, pause. I was ready to move in, and we could ask any questions of her. She was on the set a lot. So behind that, where they shot that, is one of the cemeteries, right? And there's all these little white crosses. So, you're just kind of sitting there 18 hours a day. So I looked at her and I was looking at the cemeteries, and I have a fascination with cemeteries anyways. So I said to her, hey, that's the cemetery? She's like, yeah. And I said, so if a prisoner dies here, they bury them here? She's like, yeah, this is their final resting place. And I said, some of the crosses have numbers and some don't. And she's like, that's correct. I said, why is that? And she said, well, the crosses that have the numbers are men who passed away here and who are white. The crosses that don't have numbers are every other color.
Wow. That just goes to show you the racism and stuff like that they faced every single
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Every day.
That's nuts.
Right. And that was a conscious effort. I mean, because it didn't make sense to me. I was like, there were dozens and dozens and
Right.
dozens of crosses. I'm like, why do some have numbers and some don't? But that's,
See, I was just thinking because of their numbers on the jail cell or whatever. So just knowing that just goes to show you how backwards we were at one time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then moving into now, it's
Are we still back?
Yeah, we're still backwards.
Have we grown? Have we
Right.
grown? What are we doing? But it was just one of those many stories where I was just like, wow.
That amazes me, to be honest with you. That was something I was not expecting, to be honest.
Yeah. And there's a few stories I didn't share with you before.
Right. I'm glad that you didn't share this one with me.
Yeah.
This is great. Another thing I want to mention is this. I like the warden. Not so much the warden, but I just like how each little thing in the Bible references the warden. Especially when he's trying to size Andy up. And then when he's sizing Andy up, Andy uses the Bible verse to represent who the warden actually is. This is my house. This is who I am. If you get in my way, I'm going to mess you up. And then Andy puts the hammer in Exodus, which means exile, which is also leaving the Pharaoh, which I thought was really interesting on how they foreshadowed that. That was really creative.
Lest we forget, we're talking about Stephen King here. Right. I will tell you this. So when Frank wrote the screenplay and then prior to that, this I don't know. I don't know if he wrote it first and then got permission or if he got permission. I think he got permission first. No, I think he wrote it first, sent it to him and said, I'd like to get the rights to be able to blah, 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 blah. Right. And so which I've seen this actually. So Stephen King, who lives in Maine, and it takes place in Maine, gave him the rights and charged him $1. And he signed the $1 and sent it to Frank.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. That reminds me of Cheers where Ted Danson bought the bar for $1.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
it's just a great story because, so many people have made so much money. And Bob Gutton, who played the warden, because of the residuals that they get, he did a great job. And there's so many, again, you've seen it many, many times. I've seen it hundreds of times, and it's why, this last time I looked at, so for example, you talk about get busy living or get busy dying. Right. I looked at the film and looked at it from a life coaching perspective. And it's like every action step moves you forward. Without any action, you stay still, you stay stagnant. And I love that Andy refused for the time he got there to let prison life define his reality, right? He chose to create his own reality, despite what the warden says, despite the warden using God as his, as the guide for, there's that whole concept of, is the warden praising God or does he think he is God? And then we know what happens when people think they're God. What happened, So, it's just, again, you can watch it a million times and you can find these layers.
Definitely. And Crane has another question, too.
Oh, I love it.
He says, when casting, did you ever have a battle of just knowing in your gut, this is the perfect actor or going with just experience?
Say it. I'm trying to find. Let me wait. Is it on top? Oh, when casting, do you ever have a battle of just knowing in your gut this is the perfect actor, or going with just experience? Okay, Crichton, I'm going to share something that I rarely share with anybody. So, I will tell you this. This is going to be my book. So, I was the associate, so I had to hire all the guards and all the prisoners. That was my thing. All 4,000 of those guys are my guys. And then we had the people that like the guy that gets, bribes the warden and gives him that little pie with a little envelope in it. He's from Ohio. He's making just a boatload of money. But to answer your question, yes, but not in the way that you think. So halfway through the film, I'm having the best time of my life. And so, there's this concept in film called continuity. In fact, they've got people that look at, mistakes that are made in films and show, well, the cameras, you saw the camera thing here, or you see, all that stuff. So continuity is a big deal. So I remember halfway through the film, and I was really serious about, like, these guys. I found them in biker bars. I found them in, strip clubs. I found them in, places that I don't go to, but I went to in order to find this roughing kind of look. So, I spent a lot of time. The big thing too is, I had about 4,000 or 5,000, and we bring them into a huge auditorium. We can say you're going to get paid. And the first like big hiccup was when the assistant director handed us the 1947 Maine Penitentiary Handbook. And in 1947, at the penitentiary in Maine, every Friday, every guard and every prisoner got a haircut. And then they showed you pictures. And I went, oh my God, they've got to get a 1940 haircut. I had guys that had hair down to their butts, beards, mustaches. They had to be clean shaven. They don't look like your father's father or father, depending on how old you are. So we had to have a meeting, and I thought, oh my God, we're going to lose everybody. And we were starting like soon, and I was freaking out. So I made giant posters of their haircuts, right? And I was like, hey, just letting you know, this is called a period piece. And a period piece means we might be. And then I put the posters up. So we're going to give you vouchers. And every Friday you have to get a haircut by one of the barbers in Mansfield. We had hired 10 of them. And I thought, it's going to be a mass exodus. It's going to be a mass exodus. We lost maybe 20 people. I was shocked.
Wow.
Shocked. So when I saw the new fish, like I couldn't even recognize anybody because people had just changed so much, right? And I remember that first couple days, when we started shooting, I would go, and this is, we didn't have cell phones, so we had
Polaroids.
Well, we had the voice, the recorders, So I go to my office, and it's like, you have 15 messages. This is what I heard. I swear to you. My name is Gloria. My husband, Jonathan, he's working on that Shawshank film. Listen, he's never looked so good in his life. You just keep it as long as he's never been so nice, so polite. This is Mrs. Johnson. My son Wilbur is on that Shawshank film. Listen, it's a miracle. We've tried to get him his hair. We get dozens every day from his girlfriends and wives and fathers and mothers. Talk about transformation. I was a life coach back then. Well, halfway through the film, to Crichton Films' question, I get a call. And they said, is this Brent Scarpo? I said, yes. Are you one of the casting people on this Shawshank Redemption film in Mansfield? I said, yes. He said, you have to stop this film. I was like, I'm sorry, who am I speaking with? Like I've got the power to stop the film. And he said, I am calling from Columbus, Ohio. I don't know his exact title, but he was in charge of the parole for the state of Ohio. And I said, I don't understand why would I stop the film? He said, do you know who you've hired? I said, I've hired people. Now, this is after the fact. So I kind of knew what he was talking about, but I was trying not to. I was kind of fibbing a little bit. He said, well, I'm driving up there. I'll be there in 2-3 hours. What address are you at? And said, okay, fine. So I waited. I didn't say anything. This guy in his suit and the thing and the briefcase, and he comes in, and I had the bottom floor of this office, and all the producers and directors and all the hair and makeup, their offices were above me. I had the whole bottom floor to myself. It was great. So he sits down. He said, listen, You have a number of people who are on parole working for you. I was like, okay, so he said, well, part of the parole of Ohio is that they're not allowed to be within 500 feet of a state-owned facility. And because we were shooting at the old reformatory, which they got out of, by the way, that's owned by the state of Ohio. And I was like, are you kidding me? Right? This is the early life coach coming at me. I said, let me just see if I got this right. You want me to fire men who have served their time at the prison that we're shooting at, and they're citizens of your state making an honest wage because you own that reformatory? He's like, yes. I said, do you understand the lunacy of what you're sharing with me right now? Right? I was like, I was beside myself because I haven't even said anything to anybody yet. He said, do you know who you really have working there? Right? Now, there's this guy, we called him Gramps. He's probably passed by now. He was the loveliest guy. He was probably in his late 60s, and every day he would get done shooting. He would walk to my office. He would bang on my door, and I had a dog that would just, bark, and he'd always thank me. Just, Mr. Scarpo, thank you so much. Thank you so much for. I said, Gramps, you don't have to come every day. No. I have to thank you. The guy opens up his briefcase. He has all these files, and he just lays them out on my desk. And he opens them up. There's pictures, like almost like the pictures I took of them, to get into the film. And there was a picture of Gramps. He said, "This guy." I was like, "Yeah." He raped 12 women. Is that who you want on your set? And I was like, oh, yeah. So I just said, I got to make some phone calls. I said, so, just wait right there. So that's when I called my boss, all this stuff. So to answer his question, that's what incensed me, that we had, I did ask them, oh, by the way, is anybody familiar with the reformatory? Oh yeah, I did 20 years there. Oh, I did 10. I was like, oh. I said, so on your cards, if you worked the washer or the laundromat, write it down. If you worked so they had done these things. So, it's a great question because these guys, I ended up having to fire Gramps. It was the hardest thing I had to do. And I didn't tell him why, but we had to let go of about, I'd say 20, 25 people just because of what they did. And then we had to sit down with the director, the assistant director, my boss, see where they were. Was there any continuity issues? Our biggest fear is like the guy that had been sitting in the cell next to Morgan Freeman was all of a sudden gone. It's like, what do you do? Escape, kind of deal. So they were lovely. They were phenomenal human beings. They were great actors. They listened. And to Crichton Films' question, yeah, that made me mad.
I can imagine, man. You put all work and effort into it, and then you find out about that. That's
I don't even know. Honestly, I don't think it was the work and effort per se. It was the principle. It was the principle. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right? Because they're on there, and again, it's state-owned property. I get that, but that's where they did their time. It was just, it's again, politics and lunacy hand in hand.
Most definitely. So let's go on ahead. I want to know how you go from doing films like Matilda, that thing you do, Air Force One, to going into being a life coach. And I know that
that's a great question.
Right, because that was a mind-blowing thing for me, to be honest with you. I'm looking at your filmography, right? I'm like, how do you go from this to like, you know what? I want to be a life coach. Total transformation out of left field that you don't even expect.
Yeah, I think so. It's a great question. So I'm one of those people that really practices living in the present moment, right? Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. And so I don't really plan a great deal. If I can give some life coaching lessons to people is, be in the present moment each and every day. And if you are, you'll be told what to do next. Most people are either in the future or in the past, right? If you're in the past, that's where sadness and depression usually lie. If you're in the future, that's where anxiety is, right? But if you're in the present, you don't have any of that. That's just joy. And so, the short of it is this: I finished Shawshank. I opened my own casting company. I loved it. I wasn't even like interested in acting anymore, to be honest with you, which was weird, right? But I was living in the present moment. I was like, no, this casting, this is kind of cool, right? And I love being with actors. I love being with producers and putting it together. So, that thing you do, Matilda, all that. Around 1995, my mother had been diagnosed with cancer. I'm an intuitive life coach. Since I was 11 or 12, I've been able to see things, sometimes predict the future. I'm a good reader. This is why I was such a great casting director, because I could look at a person's 8x10 photo and I could tell you whether they were going to be a pain in the butt on the set. I could just do it, right? I'm really good at that. And so, my mother, I woke up at 3:00 in the morning one time and I had a premonition that my mother had cancer. And so the next day, unbeknownst to her, I asked her when the last time she had a physical. It had been 5 years because she had just moved from Pennsylvania to California. She lived a couple miles away from me. And I was like, Mom, you got to take care of yourself, right? So I made an appointment for her with the doctor, and sure enough, we found the lung cancer. And I remember the neurologist saying to me, had you not said something, she probably would have been gone in 6 months. Instead, we battled for about 2.5 years. In fact, she helped me pick the kids for Matilda because she was an elementary school secretary. But unfortunately, I lost her in 1997. And I don't know, in life, we have those pivotal moments. And so I been worked really hard up to that moment in time. I joke about it, but in Hollywood, we don't sweat, we glisten, but we're working 12, 13, 14, 18, 20 hours a day. I mean, it's why you're paying $15 for a movie ticket, Movie Lovers Unite. So I took a year off. I needed a break. So I took a break. That year and a half, I decided I didn't want to cast anymore. I decided that I wanted to produce or direct, right? And it's the Richie Cunningham, syndrome. He was on Happy Days. He was in, just lost it. The Andy Griffith Show. And so he was a little boy actor. Then he wrote, and then he directed. He's a great director. So that's what happened. I decided I want to do that. Didn't know what I was going to do. But I produced a documentary called Journey to a Hate-Free Millennium. I got the rights to tell the stories of Matthew Shepard, James Byrd Jr., and the kids that were killed at Columbine High School. I produced it with a friend of mine, directed it. We submitted it for the Oscars. We got as close as you can get, but then got cut at the last voting. That we went to 100 different film festivals. The moment that changed my life was the kid at Redlands University who wanted to rent the film. And it's a very serious film, though it has poignant moments, but it looks at, bullying, the issue of hate in society back in 1999 as we were transitioning into 2000. So he called me. We just saw this at the LA Film Festival and we want to rent it. And I just said no. And I was trying to get a deal with Showtime at the time. So, but this kid begged me. Right. And I was in Denver packing, trying to get back to LA. And he said, well, what if we don't rent it? Because I said, it's a serious film. You just don't drink Coke and eat popcorn for this. And I didn't know what I had. He said, what if you come with it? I said, I'm sorry. He said, what if you come with the film and we show the film and then you do Q&A afterwards? I was like, oh. I said, well, what would you pay for that? Right. And then he told me. I was like, I'm there. Well, that was 1999, and from 1999 to 2010, I spoke to 1.6 million people in all 50 U.S. states and 17 foreign countries. I have 1 million miles on United Airlines alone. So that's where I found my speaker voice. That's where I found the life coaching voice. That's where I married the entertainment industry into education. And my goal was to transform hate into love and acceptance through this 10-year process. And then 2010 came, and I was getting a lot of people that was asking my advice for things, and I would email them, and I thought, you know what? There's got to be some kind of business in this so that I'm not just giving a Band-Aid. So I've had some really great mentors. So I decided to open up my own life coaching business. And I've been doing that ever since. Still write and still play in the entertainment industry as well. I'm actually thinking about going back into acting, so we'll see what happens with that.
Awesome.
But the big thing is the focus I have now is the book. You saw my Today Show episode, so that was a
Right.
big
I
deal. I
did.
love telling stories. So I have this book called The Red Balloon, Transforming Your Life, One Inspirational Story at a Time, and that's going to come out Mother's Day of 2022. Hopefully we'll come back.
You're definitely welcome to come back anytime you want. And matter of fact, I'm actually going to point this out right now. As soon as you're on the show, you're part of the Movie Lovers Unite family of guests.
Yay!
So
Yay!
you always have an open invitation to come on, even if you're not promoting something, even if you just want to be on,
Oh, I would love to
just to
do
talk,
that. We still have to
whatever.
talk
You're
about that
always
thing you
welcome.
do and
Yes,
Matilda.
yes. And Matilda is actually one of my childhood movies as well,
Yep.
and stuff like that. Because I went to the movie theaters, saw that. Air Force One, saw that movie in theaters. Basically, you pretty much impacted my life without even knowing that you
Without
impacted
even
my life.
knowing it, right?
But I just want to say this though too, is this, and I knew it instantly whenever I was watching that whole thing with the Today Show, was just how much of a down to earth person you are and how much of
Oh,
an
I
open
appreciate
book
that.
you are, especially when the guy is over there singing about the news with your mother and stuff
Right.
like that. And I saw how touching you were towards that. And
Yeah.
I thought that was really awesome that the Today Show chose you as the winner, and they sung a song, a musical, to represent what you did. I think of what your mother, the connection that you and your mother had. I think that was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, just to kind of bring your listeners up to speed. And again, we all have our own story, and it's about sharing. You've got this amazing podcast, Movie Lovers Unite. You know, it's bringing together all those that are passionate about movies, which is just wonderful. So I'm grateful for the experience. Storytelling is really the foundation of who I am as a human being. I think it's in the sharing of our story that we can better understand. So, the Today Show was having a contest. I was waiting for an airplane. It was called Everybody Has a Story. They were looking for stories where people had overcome major challenges in their life. Mine was the death of my mom. And so I wrote 300 words or less, the worst English grammar you can possibly imagine, sent it in. Horrible. It really was horrible because I had to reread it. And they picked 8 winners. They got 100,000 stories. They picked 8 winners, and I was winner number 8. Out of that experience, and if you go to YouTube, everybody, and you just put in Brent Scarpo, the Today Show, you can see all 12 minutes. But the story really is about how my mother and I proved that there was life after death, because I had a very unique, phenomenal, wonderful mom. Now, out of that came what I've discovered, that when you have your own website that's got your telephone number and you've been on the Today Show, people call you. So I got calls for at least a month, 3 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 6 in the morning. It was crazy pants. I'm not, I really do appreciate the down to earth. I mean, I've worked with a lot of celebrities. I've done things that could be interpreted as famous, but that's not how I see myself. I just kind of see myself as a human being. And God knows I've worked with some actors that don't do that, but for the most part, I've worked with actors that really are just like me on a lot of levels. They just might have more things kind of deal. But people kept calling, where's your book? Where's your book? Where's your book? And I was like, I don't have one, but thank you for calling. I don't have one. Thank you for calling. Oh my God, I got to write a book. So that's what I've really been working on the last 10 years. It's probably the second hardest thing I've done in my life, next to burying my mother. So it's called The Red Balloon, Transforming Your Life, One Inspirational Story at a Time. It's going to come out Mother's Day. It's really a marriage of storytelling and life coaching. And it's about the wisdom of my mom, how we proved that there was life after death. There's life coaching lessons in it. We're going to have, I'll share with you, you can put my website up, but we're going to have a GoFundMe page show up in about a week or two, because we're down to 4 covers after doing 40 of them of what the book's going to look like. And then we're going to do pre-order sales. And everybody who does a pre-order sale will get a gift, and they'll get a private invitation to the Zoom launch party during Mother's Day.
To be honest with you, I can actually relate to you, because my mom actually had cancer back in
Oh,
'06, but she survived it and
oh,
everything else.
good.
But still, I remember the stress and the anxiety and trying to just. I'm going to school. I'm going to college for HVAC and stuff like that. So I'm tackling that. I'm going to work. I'm working full time, and I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to juggle this and plus my school and plus
Right.
work? So I'm trying to find a balance and everything in between everything. Luckily, I had a good teacher that said, "You know what? You're doing great in my classes. All you have to do is worry about your electives and focus on the rest, and you're automatically graduating." I'm like, "Okay, awesome." So I got that covered, and I'm just grinding away, praying, do everything I can for my mom and stuff like that too, because that was like my biggest thing was trying to figure out a way to keep doing what I'm doing, not being able to focus on anything at home, because if I focus on that, it's going to eat me up inside at work. So I'm just glad that I got through it, you know?
Yeah, it's a great. I would gently suggest to you that, I was casting Matilda at the time when she got the cancer,
Oh,
and
wow.
I was her primary caregiver. So I moved her in with me, and I'm sure there's plenty of people, unfortunately, out there that have been through something like this, whether it's the death of a friend or the death of a loved one or a grandparent or whatever. So yeah, it puts things into perspective. Um, I'm not a big fan of balance. One of the things I teach is how to create harmony in your life,
Mm,
because balance is just not a word that I use. So
right,
creating that harmony where you can take all the pieces of the orchestra and allow them to play whatever particular song that you're trying to direct at that moment in time, right? That the song still is played. So each section, the woodwinds, the brass, the flautist, the percussion, they're all part of our lives. And so, to your point, yeah, absolutely. How do I get through everything and manage it? And again, I'm so glad that your mom survived this, because those that don't, and I took a year off to go through the grieving process, right?
right,
And that's a whole nother subject. But I think just going through that, right? Because you can't go over it, you can't go around it, you have to go through it. Some people
right.
try, but yeah, I went through it, and like I said, sadly, we did hospice, and it's all in the book. It is just I'm not one to toot my own horn per se, but I have friends now that I've been sending chapters to, and they're like, it's been 10 years that I've been working on this, because I only write during the summer. And then COVID happened because it was supposed to be out during COVID. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing the COVID thing. I'm just going to hang loose. So it is, I would say my book is the Andy Dufresne of the book world.
I just want to say this too. I've watched some of your other videos where you're making huge impacts on other people's lives.
Oh, thank
People
you.
that are just, wanting some help, some self help to help them out throughout maybe a day, throughout maybe certain circumstances. And you have such great feedback from them. And that's just awesome. You never know who you're impacting or anything like that. Like, for instance, like I told you before, even doing this, I get letters sometimes. Thank you for doing what you're doing because I was having such a crummy day. But
Right,
because of your movie review, I'm
right,
now having a better day. I'm laughing like I never laughed before. I
right.
get letters like that sometimes. Sometimes I get letters of, how do I get into doing what you're doing? Stuff like that. And it's just humbling to know that we can actually impact some people's life because we don't know who we're impacting or anything like that. We're doing what we think that is right for us, and we're doing what we need to do to help others, but we don't know the amount of impact that we're having on someone else, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, especially given this particular generation of technology, because we have more impact. We have more methods and pathways of being able to impact people. Like, look, I saw you put my website up there. If
Yep.
anybody, I do a complimentary consultation with anybody. You just have to you can email me, which is brent@brentscarpo.com. You can go to my website, and the email's on the bottom. But if you do brent@brentscarpo.com, you just let me know that you are on this particular podcast, Movie Lovers Unite. And I do a complimentary intuitive reading. It's about 45 minutes long. It shares, all the good things, the challenging things, all that. And if you're interested in having a life coach, I work with all kinds of people and all kinds of budgets. My goal really is to take the passion of what it is that I do and my past experiences and to help you co-create the best version of your life. If anybody's interested in that, please definitely email me, Brent@BrentScarpo.com. Go to my website. You can click on a complimentary session. It will transform you.
And I just want to say this, and you helped me out with just a few minutes.
I know we had a bit of a life coaching moment, didn't we? It happens. So, all of a sudden, the little spider senses go off, and like,
you know what? I was going to ask you if I get charged for that later on.
No, this is all no. This is we're in the week of Thanksgiving, so I'm a big attitude of gratitude here. So that's my way of being grateful for allowing me to be here.
You're welcome. And thank you as well.
Sure.
And that's everything I wanted to cover as far as tonight. I wanted to go longer, but my voice and everything is not allowing me to because there's a lot more stuff I want to get into. But is there a title for your new book? Can you talk about
Yeah, so the book is called, so if you email me, Brent@BrentScarpo.com, or you can do this, which I would ask you to text me at 760-835-3327. Again, 760-835-3327. Just text me that you're interested in being put on my private book list, or if you want to have a complimentary intuitive reading, just let me know that you're interested. Saw you on Movie Lovers Unite. I'm interested in a session, or please put me on your book list. Then I've literally had this book list for 10 years. So again, it's called The Red Balloon, Transforming Your Life One Inspirational Story at a Time by Brent Scarpo. But again, if you just email me, because I've been collecting names for 10 years, you'll be on my private list. You'll be invited to the Zoom launch. We're doing it for Mother's Day to honor all the moms and moms-to-be and their children. Absolutely.
It's just an honor to be able to do this with you. This has been a real dream come true, to be honest with you. Just to talk about you on some behind the scenes stuff, a movie that I love, talk about the life coaching experiences and stuff like that. And I also want to tell you this too. You're, like I told you before, you're always welcome on the show. I would love to have you back when my voice is rested. If we can actually,
maybe what we should do. Maybe we should do a. We should do what I feared, because when I finished Shawshank, it was about a year later. The producer called me and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "No, I'm not. I mean, what I do." He said, "Are you free?" And it's like, "Please tell me we're not doing Shawshank Part 2. I beg you, we're not doing that. Like, please tell me we didn't go to the island and capture you." Like, that was my big, I was freaking out. I was like, no, this cannot have a sequel. This cannot have a sequel. This cannot be Superman 47. We can't do it, right? He said, no. I'm working on a movie called Air Force One. But to our point, maybe we should do a Shawshank Part 2.
I'm down for that. I'm totally down to doing a Shawshank Part 2 of catching up with you and stuff like that. Also, too, I just want to say once again, I mean, just doing what you're doing is just fantastic.
Thank you.
And helping and inspiring people is just great. And I just want to say one more thing. Hey, Aaron, that's my fiance's kid. He's watching right now. And
Hi, Aaron.
Too. So I just want to say, give him a quick shout out. It's almost like past his bedtime, but he's
How old is Aaron? How old is Aaron?
He's actually 10. So
10. Well, Aaron, I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so grateful that you're here, and what a pleasure to have you be part of our experience today.
I'm glad that he's here as well, and I'm also glad Brandy is watching with me as well. And thank you, Rossi. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, everyone that tuned in tonight. It means so much to me.
Yeah, absolutely. These are great questions, everybody. I love
Crichton. Speaking of Crichton, he has a movie opening up for a premiere on in December, and I'm actually part of it because I actually was the editor and not the screenwriter, but he was the screenwriter, but I helped him with the editing part of the screenplay. And so he has a new horror movie coming out called The History That Haunts Us.
Oh,
So,
I love that title.
yes, it's very
I
interesting.
love that title. The History
And
That Haunts Us. Ooh.
I have one question for you. Now, with Stephen King, he's very picky on who does properties. What was his vocal point on the film after it was done? That was my curiosity.
It's funny because he never came to the set. We never really heard from him that I was aware of. Like, I never heard from casting or anything like that. It's almost like he didn't really have anything to do with it. It's funny. I should do this, but I haven't. I should Google Stephen King to see if he's ever talked about it. But he charged Frank $1. $1. I mean, do you know how much money that's made? And I don't think
Right.
he producing. I don't. I may be wrong, but I know it was $1 and he signed it. It's not like he needs money and everything, but I know Frank and he probably had a lot of conversations and such, and we had a research person. But I know for sure that, like, I think we had. I mean, we're in Mansfield, so we at that time there were only 2 hotels, and they weren't that great. So
Right.
I knew we had like a couple rooms that we rented that nobody stayed in, thinking that he might come just so we have it. But I might be wrong, but I do not remember getting any kind of notice that he was coming, that he came to the set. None of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what his thoughts is. We're gonna have to do that on part 2 of
Yeah,
this.
that's our part 2. See, we have something for part 2 now. Yeah,
Right.
if I can do a little research into that. Yeah, because I thought he would. I mean, I'm a bit of a fan, but we usually would always get these notes. Whenever Liz Glotzer was the executive producer, that's another story for that part 2.
Right.
She
We're teasing.
she had to make an emergency midnight run from Hollywood to Mansfield. I'll say, we'll leave the audience with this. We'll leave it, and you're not going to like me, but hopefully you'll love me. There was a time where Tim Robbins walked off the set and quit. I know you're not happy with me, John. I know you're not happy.
No.
Yes. Yeah. I'm telling. He did. We thought we're done. We're
Right.
like people. We wrapped early. He walked off the set. This is not a well-known story. He walked off the set livid. And all I know is everybody that night was on the phone trying to find a new job because we were done.
And
that would be part 2.
you know what? This actually needs to be on the movies that made us.
Yeah.
The Shawshank Redemption story.
It was,
because I would actually watch that.
Yeah.
But you
I know. I'm a storyteller. I have to leave. We have to leave a little bit of a, it's like, like endings of really good movies. Like I just saw, what was the one? The Marvel one.
Shang-Chi.
What's it called?
Or was it Shang-Chi or Eternals?
Eternals. I saw Eternals, so I wasn't. It was okay, but then I stay. I stay afterwards, and a lot of people left, and there's a lot of credits that go by, and then there's this scene, right? And I went, oh, okay,
So
right.
This is your way of rolling the credits.
This is exactly what I've done.
So this is a shared universe.
I didn't plan this, but all of a sudden, like. This is 1993, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, there was that. Oh, yeah, this film almost didn't get made.
I just named this Shawshank Redemption interview number 2, the drama that was.
That's exactly right. No, I'll remember this. Everybody come back, everybody. But it was, it was a bad day.
Yeah. So, with that being said, Brent, where can everybody follow you at? I know that you had the links. I'll put that.
Yeah, so there's BrentScarpo.com. There's Brent at BrentScarpo.com. You know, you want to be Facebook friends, you can search me on Facebook. I live in Palm Springs, California. I have a lovely service dog and a emotional support dog that works with me. So on TikTok, which I love TikTok, it's at Brent and Sophia. Instagram is at Brent and Sophia. So BrentAndSophia. So that's our Instagram. That's our TikTok. I don't do Twitter. I don't know. It's just, but I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. Again, if you just search Brent Scarpo, there's not that many of me. Like if you Google mine as you have done, and you'll find me. And then there's my website. It has all my social media at the bottom, so you can click there as well.
All right. And of course, you guys can go ahead, follow me underneath Movie Lovers, TV Lovers Unite on Facebook. And of course, underneath the same brand name on Instagram and on Pinterest as well. If you want to get an audio only podcast of this episode and many more of our episodes, you can get that wherever you guys get your major podcast at. But also, too, go to Good Pods. Good Pods is a great place. It's like social networking for podcasters. You guys can go ahead. You can tip us. You can not only can you tip us, but you can also rate us, give us a 5-star review. That always helps. That helps us up and climbing. But also, too, you can also go to Apple Podcasts as well. That also helps us out with our rankings and everything, too, for other people to be part of the Movie Lovers Unite family and also for people to find us. And then, of course, you guys can go ahead. If you want to donate $5 to $10 to the page, how do you do that? I'm glad that you guys asked. All you have to do is go over to GoFundMe.com/Movie Lovers Podcast, and that's how you can donate $5 to $10 to us. The links will be below. Also, too, you can also follow me underneath Movie Lovers Unit on Twitter, and then underneath Movie Lovers Unit 0 on TikTok as well. I do some promotional stuff from time to time over there. Then, of course, you can always email me if you want to be on the show or anything like that at movieloversunite@gmail.com. And, of course, I'm actually trying to get my website back up and running again. I lost the domain. I'm trying to get that back up and going again to do some more movie news. So I'll hope to have the domain up sometime soon. But that's going to be it for the show, guys. Tomorrow night, don't forget, we normally have Dexter Mondays, but because of me being sick, Charlie and I had to move it over to tomorrow night. So Dexter Wednesday, tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern. Don't miss out. Then Friday night, we're actually doing our Hawkeye Fridays. That's what I'm calling it, Hawkeye Fridays. What is Hawkeye Fridays? It's the new Disney Plus show, Hawkeye. Season 1, episodes 1 and 2 review. I have a big panel coming onto the show. I got Dazia coming on. I have Nick Krafkis, Clinton Robinson. They're going to be back on here again. So don't forget to do this too. Don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also, too, don't forget to smash that little bell on the right-hand corner to allow you guys to know when we have something new coming out. And always, until next time, guys, it's been fun. It's been real. I can't wait to do this again. And bye-bye. Thank you again, Brent. I do appreciate you being on the show.
Sure.
And that's it.